Well, everyone, we have a lot to talk about. A lot of big players linked with Arsenal. Nico Williams, a player that's been linked heavily, but is there a financial element that Arsenal can't get over the line with? That's what I want to talk about. I'm not sure that that's completely true. We're also going to talk about Eze because he's been linked, especially by ITKs, but particularly reliable ones. And I think there may be a reason to be excited about this deal. Joshua Kimmich, Mikel Merino, and more to talk about all in this video. But let's start with Nico Williams, the financial part of this deal that is supposedly going to be quite hard for clubs to get done. I don't really get it. And I've actually pulled some research and some evidence together to show you this isn't a deal that I think people should be running away from as much as conversation on social media will have you believe. People are just like, yeah, I like Nico Williams, but this, but that. And you think, okay, so no one's really got doubts about the talent. They're talking about more the deal it would take to get it done. What do we mean? Let's get all the reports together first, because it's not just social media conversations. Reporters who are talking about it too. Now, the Athletic said that Arsenal have Athletic Bilbao winger Nico Williams high on their wish list. Arteta sees him as one of the preferred options if Arsenal go for a wide player this summer. Now, Barcelona can't afford his signing as things stand, according to The Athletic, but Sam Dean also came in and said that Arsenal's recruitment team are big admirers of Nico Williams, and that he said that he reminds him of Martinelli with that width on the left and that the willingness to run defenders every game. This came after he was brilliant for Spain against Italy. We all saw that, and actually I think a lot of people watched that game and thought, wow, can do it off the left, can do it off the right with both feet as well. Young player, really direct. Yeah, we could all see where he'd add a lot to Arsenal. So, no real questions about the talent, but more around the financial side, because Ben Jacobs came in, according to AFC stuff, saying that Barca, Arsenal, Chelsea and Liverpool have all looked at Williams. There's a £45 million release clause that's seen as good value, but the wages make it a difficult deal to do. Romano said a similar thing. Chelsea are looking at Williams after missing out on Elise, and that the release clause with taxes, payment up front and salary request is all considered too high. So what are we talking about there? You know, basically, we can all agree that £43 million or 45, whatever it is, for a release clause, it's pretty good value, right? We're talking about one of the most exciting young wingers in Europe. We're talking about a player who's starting for Spain at the Euros. We're talking about a player who's two-footed, can play on each side, he's just got bags of talent. He can create, he can run at players. And in a world where Anthony, Mudryk, Sancho, Pepe, all in the last 5 years went for extortionate money as wingers, here's a player, and there's more, by the way, to that list, but here's a player that at £45 million, even if you're unsure, you'd think, well, that's worth the risk, surely. I know clubs don't really operate in that way anymore, but I'm thinking, yeah, that's very good value. So they're talking about the salary. But what does that mean? So I did some research and I looked up, and the number that everyone's basically reporting is on €200,000 per week, Athletic Bilbao. Now that is a lot of money. Before I talk about why that's not as bad as people are making out, that is just a lot of money. I'm not even talking for someone like me. Like a footballer's wages are just ridiculous. And even in that world, that is a lot for a 21-year-old who is just 1 or 2 years into senior football and sort of having the hype he does and being tracked by the clubs he's being tracked by. But let me just say this, at €200,000 per week, that's about 170 grand per week. If you stack that up with Arsenal's wages, current wage structure, and the potential top earners if we were to sign a Nico Williams, you see there where he'd be placed above Zinchenko and under Martinelli at 170 grand per week. That is if we were to sign him on the wages he's currently on. Now, we're going to talk about in a sec whether we'd even get him for those wages, but if purely we signed him and paid him what he's on now, I'd say that he's actually placed around where you'd expect him to be. You know, he's above Zinchenko, you'd expect. He's above Ramsey, you'd expect. He'd be above Jorginho, Trossard, Raya, which all sounds about right. But you wouldn't put him on more than maybe a Saliba, a Saka, an Ødegaard, a Rice for sure. So when you're talking about adding a winger who's meant to get goals and assists, who's meant to be that difference to the forward line, one of the getting goals and assists and getting the output and the numbers that are going to get you over the line for the big trophies, the Premier League, the Champions League, that's not going to come cheaply. So if someone said to me, Arsenal are going to sign a winger that they're going to put on 200 grand a week that is hopefully going to make the difference and get us over the line for the title, I'd say, yeah, that sounds about right. So I don't actually think the current salary he's on, reportedly, according to Capology, I don't think sounds that crazy. Let me also give you this, right? He signed his new deal with Athletic Bilbao, as you can see, on December 1st, 2023. That's when it was announced. So that was, 6-7 months ago? And I imagine that was quite a big jump from what he was on then to what he's on now. So common sense dictates to me that we're actually looking at a player here who might, okay, when you go for another job in life, you get a promotion, you want that, pay rise. But I'd imagine having, been put on a pretty healthy salary at Bilbao with a pretty reasonable release clause, I would imagine that there's a salary there that actually, even if he was to make a jump, it wouldn't be anything major, maybe 170 to 200. This idea that we'd be paying some crazy, 300 grand a week to secure his services, that might be true. I don't know the player personally, but that doesn't make sense. Like, common sense dictates to me that isn't what the next jump would be. Look, I don't know the guy. I don't know him or his agent, so I really am just sort of guessing here. But I would think even if we got him nearer that 170, or 170 to 200, that is about where I'd expect him to be for, like I said, the winger we're adding that's meant to make the difference to our forward line to get the big trophies over the line. Do you all get where I'm coming from here? Now, I might be wrong. It might be, because if you look here at Athletic Bilbao's top earners, there's a big difference between Nico Williams and the players below. Unai Simon, the Spain number one, Ander Herrera, Sanse, Ikem Muniain has been there a very long time. Now, I might be wrong. The demands might be crazy. Maybe these reports of high wage demands are coming from inside information, but no one's actually claiming that this is what he wants. They're more talking about what he's on now, and I actually think if you got him for nearer what he's on now, that wouldn't be that crazy. Do you get what I'm saying? Let me know in the comment section below if you get what I'm saying. Maybe I'm totally wrong. Maybe he wants 250 to 300, and yeah, that would feel like a bridge too far for a player when there's other wingers in the market, like Mohamed Kudus. Go check out that video if you missed it. So those are my thoughts on Nico Williams. If he's the guy and you get him for around what he's on, maybe a little bit more, do the deal. If he's the guy and he really is the preferred option. But another player we could be looking at is Eberechi Eze, the Palace forward, midfielder, winger. He plays so many different positions. That's so interesting about Eze. But as you can see from Sami Mokbel, there's a £60 million release clause. It would rise by around an additional 8 million with performance-based add-ons. And Team News and Ticks on his Patreon said that he's been told by two unconnected people at Arsenal. Let me read the quote. I've been told by two unconnected people that Arsenal are looking at Eberechi Eze. I think it's important I read that quote out correctly. He says, I know loads of people at the club like him. Eze has a very affordable release clause, around 60 million, but a large amount of the clause has to be paid up front. Now, Team News and Ticks, as I'll always say on these videos, he's not an official reporter as far as I'm aware, but he's been incredibly accurate with everything that he's given us in terms of Arsenal news. He's on Charles Watts' channel giving information. He's got a Patreon that you should all go check out. His information is always very, very solid. Now, that's interesting about the large amount having to be paid up front of the release clause, because that is the kind of thing maybe Arsenal would want to have 60 million pay 30 million up front. I don't really know what's a large amount. I think around 50 million, or at least that's what Alex Goldberg is saying, because Alex Goldberg has said that everyone at Arsenal loves Eze. They view him as someone who can play left wing or 8. However, Palace want 50 million of the 60 million paid up front. Now, Alex Goldberg he's a Chelsea fan and does Chelsea content and does have information on things. He was the first for the Kai Havertz stuff, as you can see. He was one of the first to break. I remember covering on AFTV and not really being sure whether I should talk about it because I hadn't seen Alex Goldberg break news before. He was absolutely spot on. David Ornstein came in with it after. Yeah, Goldberg was absolutely right. As you can see, he was also one of the people really pushing that Declan Rice was always more likely to join Arsenal, even at a point where it looked like City were really in the race. So, yeah, Alex Goldberg, Team News and Ticks. No, I'm not bringing you The Athletic or BBC Sport here or whatever, but there are people who've been very reliable and I listen to them when they talk, and I'm just being very transparent with you about that. So, Eze, a player we like, left wing, 8, that makes sense. I do think the 8 thing is interesting because we've been linked with more traditional central midfielders, Zubimendi, Guimaraes, Locatelli over the years, but I'm talking more this summer, João Neves. Eze just feels like a 10 who could play left 8 in a system where we get Ødegaard and Eze up the pitch. You want to know how it would look. But it just makes me think, is that really the profile for at least midfield we want? Now, if they see him as great depth for the left wing, who can also play in midfield, I like that because I think he's really, really talented. But the profile doesn't quite fit for me. As much as I think he's brilliant, as much as I think he gives us moments and would add a lot to this team, something that doesn't quite feel right there. But do I think we should be, maybe excited is not the word, because no one is claiming that Arsenal have made a move for Eze, but should we be encouraged that Arsenal are looking at a player like Eze? Yeah, I think we should be encouraged that they seem willing to spend heavily, whether it be in central midfield or on the wing. They clearly want to add something in those areas too. Now, Joshua Kimmich has been linked because Florian Plettenberg of Sky Germany has said that only 5 top clubs are still in consideration for Kimmich. Either now or in 2025. Those are Man City, Liverpool, Arsenal, Real Madrid and Barcelona. It's just great that we are like in for these kind of players. It's not the only report. Graham Bailey also said that HITC understands that Arsenal joined the chase for Bayern Munich's versatile superstar Joshua Kimmich. He's 29 years old. Some people aren't sure about this. I am. Sign him. Sign him. He's brilliant. He's brilliant. He can invert from right back, which we tried to do with Thomas Partey. He can be an overlapping fullback too. He can play in central midfield. I could see him playing as the 6 with Rice as the box-to-box 8 and Erdegaard. I think he honestly addresses maybe 2 positions and 3 tactical approaches that we could add for next season. I think he's brilliant, Kimmich, and I'd be all over this. Do I think we do get him? I'm not sure. I think he's more likely to go to Barcelona or Man City, but I do think he moves this summer. I don't think it'll be a 2025 move. I think it'll happen now because Bayern are doing a lot in terms of revamping the squad. A lot of big players are available. De Ligt, is that someone you'd go for if we need someone at the back? Alphonso Davies has been linked with moves. Yeah, I think he's a player that gets a move, Kimmich. He's 29. It's the time to do it after the Euros. It makes a lot of sense. Will it be to us? I'm not sure, but I love that we are in the conversation. Mikel Merino is the player that's been linked according to Sport via Sport Witness. Arsenal apparently really want to sign him. Now, Mikel Merino, you can hit the pause button if you want to read this report in more detail. He was on loan at Newcastle. I think was playing under Rafa Benitez, and he's done really well at Sociedad. Now, what I know of the player through actually scouting for a few years, Football Manager and all, but actually watching bits of him, very Xhaka-esque, I think, at times, in that left foot he's got, in the way we'd probably deploy him as that left 8 who can also be a double pivot and build up, who can maybe get forward a little bit, and he's got a lot of qualities, lots of, you know, he's a what's the word? He's a all-round central midfielder. You know, I think he can get involved in, you know, the difficult defensive side of the game. He can contribute in the final third, and he's a player that I'm actually not surprised to see us linked to. How serious is it? I don't know. I mean, Sport have 2 million followers. Yeah, I don't know if there's any correlation there, but yeah, we've been linked with him, and he feels like a player we would be linked with. Interestingly enough, not Zubimendi, who's also Sociedad. We haven't really heard a lot about that recently. Now, final thing I want to tell you about very, very quickly is Bruno Guimaraes. Are we linked? No, but today, according to Fabrizio Romano, is the deadline for the release clause of £100 million to be triggered, I suppose. 23:59 PM UK time. That's when it expires. Very interested to see if anyone, mainly Man City, make a move for Bruno Guimaraes. I think he's the profile that's right for us, but I don't think we were ever going to go near £100 million. Everyone, let me know your thoughts in the comments section below on all these players. Do you understand what I'm talking about with Nico Williams? My theory around how much he would be. Eze, are you excited about those links? Do you believe the links? What are you thinking? Joshua Kimmich, would you take him at 29 years old? I certainly would. I imagine he'd come with high wages too. And go check out my video on Mohamed Kudus, where I talk about, well, I think he's absolutely the winger that we should be signing this summer. Many thanks. Catch you soon.